Toga, 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 toga. With a little sprinkling of vengeance, retribution, and a lot of ripping off of Dario Argento and other Italian films, comes A Wounded Fawn, a Shudder original from writer-director Travis Stevens and also written by Nathan Faudree, who did some shorts. If the name Travis Stevens sort of rings a bell, but you can't quite place it, Jacob's Wife, Jacob with a K, by the way, for maximum coolness, I guess. That movie is a little bit weird, had some ideas, had CM Punk in it, in a minor role, and also didn't really know what it wanted to be. Ended up being a goddamn mess. Speaking of goddamn messes, Girl on the Third Floor. That's right, that movie that starred CM Punk. Yeah, it's from the same guy that did this. So I was automatically ready to just dismiss the goddamn movie, but I'm like, you know what? Some people, they start small, they have to work up, and maybe they get better. Nope. A Wounded Fawn had some neat little ideas, some cool visuals, and was pretty much ripping off just about any really, really good, if not completely bizarre, Italian horror movie from the 60s to 70s, and while the main two cast members, Josh Rubin, and I love that sandwich, by the way, I kid, who was in Scare Me, which was a really, really good indie horror movie, and Sarah Lind, they played Bruce and Meredith, and basically it's a night of craziness, and to art, to beauty, and the night ahead, and people will forget a lot about you, but they won't forget how you made them feel. A lot of quotes, and a lot of talk about art, and a lot of talk about are people who commit horrible, horrible things actually just downright evil, or is there something going on in their heads? There's something that you just need to rip out of their head and then they'll be perfectly normal. All this stuff's talked about, and it tries to be this, crazy, mind-blowing thing about, well, maybe people that commit violent acts aren't all that bad. Maybe there's just something chemically wrong with them, or maybe people are just born this way, as the Lord and Goddess Lady Gaga once said. Basically, the idea and the plot, such as it is, involves Bruce, who is into art dealing and also into being a serial killer. That's not a spoiler, that's literally in the description. And after a certain thing in the, certain incident happens in the beginning, which involves death, because serial killer, he ends up taking a particular statuette that is of the Greek goddesses of vengeance and retribution, and read up on it. I mean, you can read up on this stuff, and it's far more interesting than anything that happens in this movie. And then we cut to Meredith, played by Sarah Lind, and she's getting out of an abusive relationship, and she's like, okay, I'm better. She's talking to her girlfriend. She's an art curator, and she's met Bruce, apparently, or maybe he hasn't. She's been talking to him, and she's going to go with him on a weekend getaway to a remote cabin. And the friends don't immediately say, okay, you just got out of an abusive relationship. Oh, you're talking to this guy. Have you met him? What do you know about him? All this? No, these are terrible friends, by the way. Terrible, terrible friends. They go to this very, very, very isolated cabin. Or not even a cabin. It's just a house in the woods. Not even a cabin in the woods. We don't even get that. We don't even get that entertainment until the weird third act. We get Josh Rubin, who, again, is a pretty damn good actor. Scare Me, he's been good in other stuff. There's potential here with the cast, and then there are obvious red flags because, again, he's a goddamn serial killer, and Meredith doesn't recognize any of this stuff because she's a complete goddamn idiot and just wants to be loved, as Papa Roach once said. And then weird shit starts happening. We get weird visuals and a whole bunch of crazy stuff, and then you have to wonder if it's all in somebody's head, or if we just gone completely goddamn nuts, or maybe we just sustained several major head injuries like everybody that was clearly writing and doing the cinematography for this movie. Can you tell that I hated it? And I hated this movie for this reason. It's not that complicated. Where people are like, oh, it's such a deep, deep narrative on this. Not really. It's pretty obvious where it's going from the beginning. It just tries to throw bonkers visuals at you, and hopefully you will not notice the fact that this movie has a paper-thin plot. There's nothing wrong with trying new things, and minimalist horror movies with some cool visuals and a couple characters you can dive into, that's great. But minimalist horror only works if you have characters, if the people that are acting in your movie are actual characters, not complete morons that actually act like other human beings would act, and didn't act like people that have never been in any kind of situation in their goddamn life. Have never been out of their house. I don't understand why this movie is so frustrating, or at least I didn't at first. And then I recognized because it just kept heaping stuff on you, in the hopes that we'll just drive you nuts with these bonkers visuals. Granted, Dario Argento's movies weren't, I mean, some of them are great. Some of them are kind of, just bonkers for the sake of being bonkers. But he's like the tent pole as far as him and Mario Bava of Italian horror movies. Italian horror movie directors, that is. And sure, Italian horror doesn't translate maybe that well to American audiences for a few reasons. There are, some just ripping off like the very, very, very red blood that is used at some points in this, and the weird costumes. And I will say that despite the small budget, I'm not going to knock the movie for having a small budget, there were some cool visuals and some cool costumes and a couple neat little things that could have worked, but the movie's just agonizing. It is really, really agonizing. It is not very good. It does not have a really particularly great message, and even though it's marketed as a 2-act Greek tragedy, it's less of a 2-act, Greek tragedy, and more of a 2-pack of ass, as the kids say. Even though I'm 41 years old trying to talk like this, I have no goddamn idea what the hell's going on anymore. But it's not good. It's not cohesive. There's nothing really to it, and it doesn't end up being anything you can sink your teeth into. You don't feel sympathy for anybody that goes through any of this stuff, because people that are victims put themselves in harm's way by doing the dumbest things possible, and it just ends up being just full of moronic people and terrible jump scares. He learned nothing from Girl on the Third Floor or Jacob's Wife, and at least Jacob's Wife leaned into the comedy a little bit, but that was also very uneven. This is wildly uneven and just not interesting. So that's basically all I have to say right there. We'll get into spoilers here. Not that the spoilers are going to matter, and not that they'll make a whole lot of sense if you haven't seen it. But anyway, it's on Shudder. I do recommend you guys get Shudder. And no, I'm not sponsored. That'd be cool, but why would they want to sponsor a small show like this? Shudder is a great horror streaming service with a bunch of originals, good, bad, and indifferent, and some other cool stuff. But anyway, 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. But yes, get Shudder. Absolutely get Shudder. Go now. Just pause the video. Go get a subscription to Shudder. Okay, so basically, there's this statuette that Bruce is drawn to, and also Bruce sees this weird owl-like creature, this demon voice or entity in his head that tells him to kill. So he kills Kate, played by Malin Barr, who outbids him in a particular auction, and then goes to her house and says, "Hey, my people want to offer you double the money and give you a $25,000 bonus because they really want this thing." "Oh, okay, I want 20% of your commission." "You drive a hard bargain." "Fine, I'll wait outside while you make the call." "Don't be silly. Come on in, stranger that followed me to my house." By the way, she ends up dead, completely dead. And then we cut to this whole thing of Meredith in therapy, getting on with her life, and then going with a complete stranger in the middle of nowhere. The friend's not stopping her, and then she ends up dead. But then she also ends up clubbing him in the goddamn head with the statue, because it turns out that every bit of bad shit that he's done, he is bringing this vengeance upon him. The vengeance, the retribution, it's all coming on him for all the terrible things that he's done, for all the bodies he's buried there, and all the terrible things, and the fact he's just kills people indiscriminately. But it's not him, it's the thing inside his head. The thing is, I would imply that this movie has anything inside his head and isn't just an empty-headed void of just nothingness that tries to say some good message. Yeah, earlier before Meredith ends up dead, we hear like leave from the trunk because the ghosts are past victims are trying to tell her. And then all these red flags going on, even literal red flags as a visual gag. Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? As they're driving. And Bruce is giving off every conceivable clue that he is not right, but apparently Meredith is just so desperate for love she's willing to die for it. And then the Weird Al creature shows up again. I mean, I know that there are names for people like this, and that's great, and fine. The second act, by the way, with 38 minutes left, involves after he kills Meredith, but then he ends up, knocked out with the goddamn, statue, and then he's got his eye all closed up, and he bandages it up because he's got a crack in his skull, and maybe it could be he could finally get the evil out of his brain, the evil part of his brain out. And then he's just being targeted by these people, including Malambar and Sarah Lynn and other people, and this weird breathy red creature that does stuff like this. A dog chases at one point. There's a black cat, a black floofy cat that I hope the cat is having a good day and a great life, because the cat was the best actor and the best character in the goddamn movie, or at least most fleshed out character. And the cat was only in there for what, 2 seconds? Nevertheless, a dog starts chasing. He's hallucinating all this crazy stuff because all the wrath and destruction and everything has wrought, and he has wrought this, and it's coming back to haunt him. And he has these weird knuckles that he stabs people in the throat with, victims in the throat. He did it with Malambar's character. He does it with Sarah Lynn's character. And eventually ends up being brought before the council, so to speak. He doesn't answer the questions truthfully. He keeps saying that he's not evil. It's the thing inside him. And then he ends up, saying, here's the statue. Take the statuette back. I don't want it. It's driving me insane. It's making me do things. I got greedy. And then he ends up stabbing himself in the neck, trying to get the evil out of him. And then Meredith is looking at him covered in a garbage bag, seemingly saying, go fuck yourself. I guess it was all a trick to get him to kill himself. I guess she didn't get stabbed hard enough in the neck, or she's really dead or whatever, and I don't think it doesn't goddamn matter. It doesn't goddamn matter at all. This movie's shit. This movie is really, really bad. Really, really bad. Please get the good people in this movie somewhere else. And I hope that this is a late entry for worst film of the year. I mean, it's up there. I don't know if it's going to be the worst, because there's been this is the 176th movie I've seen released this year, so there's a lot of shit going on. This is right up there with the scary of 61st, though, which was really bad. Anyway, so yeah, F. It obviously gets an F. Agree, disagree with what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Reckland. By the way, the whole toga intro was because he ripped up bed sheets and dressed in a toga like the Greek, people and everything. That's why I did that. Anyway, I'm John Reckland, and I'll see you soon.